If somebody would say, "Oh my God, you have such beautiful eyes," my mother would say, "Elizabeth, remember, always remember, it's the expression in your eyes, not your eyes, they're just eyes. It's the expression, what you're feeling."
It's been the most exciting experience of my life being here and working on Broadway, and I want to thank everybody that made it possible. This isn't an acceptance speech.
She didn't need a single tweet. All she had to do was walk into a room, and the world lost its mind. Her name was Elizabeth Taylor, and this is the story of how a little girl became the most famous woman who ever lived. Let's get into it. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something. When we talk about Elizabeth Taylor, we're not just talking about an actress. We're talking about a woman who was so beautiful, so talented, and so magnetic that she literally changed the way Hollywood operated. She wasn't just a celebrity, she was the celebrity, the blueprint, the standard, the original. And her story starts in a place you probably wouldn't expect. Elizabeth Rosamond Taylor was born on February 27, 1932, in London, England. Her father, Francis, was an art dealer. Her mother, Sarah, was a former stage actress who gave up her career to raise her family. Now here's where it gets interesting. Elizabeth was born with a rare genetic mutation called distichiasis, which basically means she had a double row of eyelashes. You heard that right, a double row of eyelashes. Most people, that condition causes irritation, discomfort, vision problems. For Elizabeth Taylor, it just made those violet eyes hit different. Because yes, Elizabeth Taylor had violet eyes. Not blue, not gray, violet, one of the rarest eye colors in human history, and she was born with it naturally. God said, let me just go ahead and make this one special from the start. Now, when Elizabeth was 7 years old, her family made a move that would change everything. It was 1939. World War II was beginning to shake Europe. And her father packed up the family and relocated from London to Los Angeles, California. They didn't come to Hollywood looking for fame, but Hollywood found them anyway. See, Elizabeth's mother, Sarah, had always believed her daughter was exceptional, not just pretty, exceptional. The way she carried herself, the way she spoke, the way she commanded attention without even trying. Sarah got her daughter in front of the right people, and at just 9 years old, Elizabeth Taylor signed her first contract with Universal Pictures. 9 years old, already in the game. Now her first couple of roles were small. Nothing major. Universal actually let her contract go, said she had no future in the business. Yeah, Universal Pictures looked at Elizabeth Taylor and said, "Nah, we're good, let that sink in." But MGM Studios picked her up, and in 1944, when Elizabeth was just 12 years old, they cast her in a little movie called National Velvet. And that was it. That was the moment. National Velvet was a story about a young girl who trains a horse to compete in the Grand National Race. Elizabeth played the lead role, Velvet Brown. The film was a massive hit, a genuine cultural phenomenon. Audiences across America fell in love with this 12-year-old girl on screen. She wasn't acting like a child. She wasn't acting like an adult trying to be a child. She was just real, present. Alive on screen in a way that most seasoned actors never achieve. Critics were stunned, studios were stunned, and the American public said, "We want more of her." Just like that, Elizabeth Taylor was a star. Now here's the part of the story that most people don't talk about enough. Elizabeth Taylor grew up entirely in the public eye. From 12 years old onward, every haircut, every date, every awkward teenage moment was photographed, reported on, and consumed by millions of people. And here's the thing about growing up in Hollywood in the 1940s. The studios owned you. MGM controlled everything. What you wore, who you were seen with, what you said in interviews. They managed your image like you were a product on a shelf. And for a teenage girl trying to figure out who she was, that was a lot of pressure. But Elizabeth handled it with a grace and a confidence that was honestly remarkable for her age. By the time she was a teenager, she had already developed that signature presence. That look, that walk, that energy. Like she knew exactly who she was and dared you to tell her different. By the late 1940s, Elizabeth was no longer the little girl from National Velvet. She was 17, 18, 19, and the roles changed with her. 1950, she starred in Father of the Bride opposite Spencer Tracy. Romantic comedy, young woman getting married. Elizabeth played it perfectly, charming, funny, effortlessly beautiful, one of the biggest hits of the year. But the role that truly announced her arrival as a serious adult actress came in 1951. A Place in the Sun, dark, dramatic, a love triangle, ambition, betrayal, murder. And Elizabeth Taylor held her own against some of the biggest actors in Hollywood. Critics who had written her off as a pretty face had to stop and take notice. This girl could ACT. Through the 1950s, Elizabeth Taylor went from star to icon. She was everywhere. 1956, Giant, starring alongside Rock Hudson and James Dean. One of the most ambitious films Hollywood had ever attempted, an epic spanning decades of Texas history. Elizabeth more than held her own in that trio of legends. 1957, Raintree County, a Civil War epic. Elizabeth received her first Academy Award nomination for this role. She was 25 years old and already nominated for the highest honor in film. Then came 1958. And the role that many consider her finest of that era, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, based on Tennessee Williams' legendary play. Elizabeth played Maggie, a woman trapped in a crumbling marriage, fighting desperately to hold everything together while the world falls apart around her. The performance was raw, emotional, powerful. She earned her second Academy Award nomination, back-to-back nominations, and she hadn't even hit 30 yet. Now I need to pause right here and tell you about something that happened in 1959 that absolutely changed the game. Elizabeth Taylor was approached to star in a massive Hollywood epic called Cleopatra, and she did something that had never been done before in Hollywood history. She asked for $1 million. $1 million for a single film. Hollywood executives nearly had a heart attack. No actor, man or woman, had ever commanded that kind of fee for a single picture. People thought she was crazy, thought it was a bluff, thought the studio would laugh her out of the room. The studio paid it. Elizabeth Taylor became the first actor in Hollywood history to negotiate $1 million contract. And just like that, she didn't just change her career, she changed the entire industry. Every actor after her, every negotiation, every blockbuster deal, every massive paycheck you hear about today traces back to that moment, that ask. Elizabeth Taylor sitting across the table and saying, "I know what I'm worth." Cleopatra began production in 1963, and it was the most expensive film ever made at that time. The sets were enormous, the costumes were extraordinary, the production was massive, and Elizabeth Taylor as Cleopatra. That image, the gold headdress, the coal-lined eyes, the regal presence, became one of the most iconic images in the history of cinema. The film itself was a complicated production, delays, drama, cost overruns. But Elizabeth's performance was undeniable, and the impact of that image, Elizabeth Taylor as the Queen of Egypt, was felt around the entire world. She wasn't just famous in America anymore, she was globally famous. Internationally famous, heads of state knew her name, foreign dignitaries wanted to meet her. She was the most photographed woman on the planet. Now let me walk you through the awards because the resume is serious. 1960, Butterfield 8, Elizabeth wins her first Academy Award for Best Actress. And then 1966, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? This was the performance of her life. Elizabeth played Martha, a bitter, sharp-tongued, emotionally devastated woman in a brutal marriage. She gained weight for the role. She stripped away every piece of glamour. No vanity, no ego, just raw, brutal, honest acting. She won her second Academy Award for Best Actress. 2 Oscars, countless nominations, box office records, salary records. By the mid-1960s, there was no debate. Elizabeth Taylor was the greatest female movie star of her generation, possibly the greatest of all time. Now Elizabeth Taylor went on to do so much more than we can cover in one video. The relationships, the activism, the jewelry collection worth hundreds of millions, the perfume empire, her groundbreaking work in HIV/AIDS advocacy in the 1980s when nobody else in Hollywood would touch the issue. She lived loudly. She loved hard, she made no apologies for who she was, and she left behind a legacy that 70, 80 years later we are still talking about, still studying, still inspired by, because Elizabeth Taylor didn't wait for permission. She didn't wait for someone to tell her she was good enough, she knew. And she made the whole world know it too. That's the move, that's the lesson. Know your worth, state your price. Walk in the room like you belong there, because you do. Elizabeth Taylor did it first, and she did it better than almost anyone ever has. That's the story, I'm out.